Hi, and welcome to What's New in Jenkins LTS. Today it's 2.361.2, and along with me, I have Mark Waite. Mark, how are you doing? What? Are we talking? Are you talking?
Sorry, I'm hearing echo.
Oh, you're hearing echo. That's weird.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if I've got.
Why don't you disconnect and reconnect, and I'll talk for just a minute.
I know what I've got.
Okay.
Purely my problem. Sorry, Darren.
No, that's
I was
fine.
watching a YouTube video in my other window, and guess what? It was a YouTube video of this live stream. Sorry about that.
I've done that before, too.
Amateur night for Mark. Sorry.
That's fine. And by the way, I'm Darren Pope. I forgot to introduce myself. This over here is Mark Waite. He is the community manager. We're going to call you that today. Community manager for the Jenkins project. You're also the documentation officer and a few other things.
Okay.
And we get together roughly every 4 weeks, basically the day after an LTS release, as long as we're actually somewhere where we can get online. Mm-hmm. And we talk about the new LTS release. Now, this one is 2.361.2. Nice and boring, which is what we want.
That's right, and we like that. There's some interesting side topics in this one, but they're mostly side topics, not major topics like would come with a .1 or might come with a security release. This is neither a security release nor a .1.
So that's good. Michi, good to see you. Thanks for joining us live today. Let's go ahead and take a look at the notes. This is probably a reasonably short stream just because there's not a whole lot. Okay, why is this? How many times have I done this? A lot. So 361.2, 28 sunnies, which is a good thing, right? This is what we like to see. 28.
That's a good pace. 1 day later, getting that kind of positive reviews is really a good thing.
And what that means, if you're looking up here along the top, there's no major issues. If you've never joined us before, we'll take you through the changelog here. We won't go into great detail, except we will go through every issue and read it line by line and read every comment line by line, letter by letter. No, we're not going to do that. But no major issues, no notable issues, and none that required a rollback, which is a good thing, right? So this is what we expect for a .2 and actually, how do we say this? This is what we expect for a non.1.
Correct.
So let's take a look at it. Fix thread safety and WebSockets handling.
Okay, so this one's valuable if you are using agents that connect by WebSockets. And WebSocket connections are a very helpful capability. It means I don't have to open a separate port for my agents to connect. And so I've got HTTPS, and if my agents use the same HTTPS or HTTP port, then I don't have to open a second port. They can communicate. But there was an issue in how those WebSockets, because you can imagine what's happening there, right? Somehow we've got communication that's programmatic going over the same kind of channel that's doing HTTP web browser stuff. And we had a mistake here that there was some code that was just not thread safe. It's fixed now.
Okay. You know what we forgot to do? I forgot to let you talk about the processes for LTS. Do you mind doing that right now before we go any further on this?
Happy to.
Okay. Go ahead.
So Jenkins long-term support is the concept that every 3 months, every 12 weeks, we would choose a new baseline and deliver a release based on that weekly baseline. So several months ago, we chose 2.361 weekly release as the baseline for an LTS series. We then stabilized that with a few backports and released 2.361.1. 4 weeks later, 2.361.2. 4 weeks later, 2.361.3. And each of those is a stable increment of the original baseline 2.361.
Okay. I knew I forgot something. Can you tell I'm a little rushed today? Don't need to be rushed. We have all the time in the world, right?
We do.
Until the next meeting at the top of the hour. It's Monday, right? Somewhere, sometime it's Monday. Okay, all of these others look pretty boring, right? Properly reset attributes of cache symbols. Okay, that's more around the SVG stuff that's been going on. Okay, but that next to bottom one, I thought we were rid of Etsy and NetD. I thought we were all System D all the time.
It's a good point, and we in general are all systemd all the time, and etc init.d is not a systemd file. However, in this particular case, there are some operating systems, Debian derived, for instance Devuan, that uses Debian but intentionally does not use systemd. And the maintainer, one of the maintainers of the systemd packaging, felt like, hey, I don't want to abandon those users completely, so left this capability in so that a Devuan user would have the ability still to run Jenkins as a service without being forced to use systemd. But in this case, it was making a flawed decision about version number in that old shell script.
And now that's been fixed.
It has been, right? Now, I still don't recommend Devuan as a distribution. I'm sorry, I'm a big Debian bigot. I like Ubuntu. I like Debian. I even like Red Hat's packaging. But I understand there are people who really don't like systemd, and they've chosen to create their own fork of an operating system for it.
The other edge case for this, I believe, was also WSL, right?
We had a report from someone who is using the Windows subsystem for Linux on a Windows machine and running Jenkins inside of that Windows subsystem for Linux. Now, for me, that's a pretty novel technique because that means you're running inside of the Windows subsystem for Linux, and I think today that's a virtual machine.
Correct.
So you're sitting on Windows, but running inside a virtual machine, but putting up with many of the limitations of the Windows file system. It's like, boy, I would not want to run that configuration in production.
No. If you're going to be running on Windows, just run on Windows.
Right. Yeah.
That's fine, right? Because that's fully supported.
It is, yes.
Okay. And that's the changelog.
That's it.
I will go ahead and review the upgrade guide for this release. Nothing specifically for .2, but let's go ahead, just in case people didn't see the 361.1. I've been noticing on Reddit and in a few other places, people have been posting Jenkins isn't starting.
Right.
And you go through the log and you see it's Java 8. So 361 requires Java 11.
Correct. And that's a good reminder for people. There are actually several items in the 361.1 changelog. First, yes, Jenkins requires Java 11. And there are actually pending changes to make the message even a little better than this message. But that will be a future LTS, think 8 weeks from now.
Right. So since we're talking about that, the next LTS is roughly, you said 8 weeks from now, but the next LTS voting takes place in about 2 weeks.
Right. The next LTS baseline will be selected in about 2 weeks. So this is a really good time for people who are on the weekly to be reporting any issues they might detect with weekly. And if you're not on weekly, but you've got an opportunity to experiment with weekly and explore weekly, now's a really good time to explore weekly, because in the upcoming 2 weeks, we'll be selecting which we're preparing to make that selection for what's the next LTS baseline.
Okay. Now, I don't know if anybody was hanging around on Monday, but one of the people that you work with, and I work with, John Mark Meeson, we did a live stream on Hacktoberfest. And if you haven't registered for Hacktoberfest yet, you probably should. I registered live, so if you're questioning how to even do that, you can go back and watch on this channel. Go back 2 days. No, is it 2 days? It was 2 days. 2 days before now, and it's called Hacktoberfest 2022 Kickoff. And you watch me finally successfully enroll. It wasn't hard, but do that. I actually put in a pull request on a repository that wasn't tagged Hacktoberfest. And it's already been released, so it doesn't matter. I have more to do, so I'll be getting started on that in earnest this weekend. Now, what do you get for Hacktoberfest? Well, once you register and once you complete all the things that go through, you might get a t-shirt, or you can choose to have a tree planted. Now, the rules are a little bit different this year. Used to be there was no number. The number this year is the first 40,000, I believe. Is that correct?
That's what I understand, yes. First 40,000.
First 40,000 to complete their thing. Now, one thing, and DigitalOcean is the primary sponsor along with AppWrite and Docker. On the homepage for Hacktoberfest, there was a Hacktoberfest kickoff last Tuesday, but then basically every Wednesday from here on, or Wednesdays and Thursdays, there's other parties going on. So check out the hacktoberfest.com site and look at all the things that's happening officially there. But on Tuesdays at noon Eastern, 6 p.m. CET, John, Mark, and I are doing a live stream talking about what's happening in the Jenkins community and what's happened in that past week. So there were just a handful of commits that had come in because it's only been a couple of days. But we're expecting to have a much bigger number to talk about and other things that are just going on next Tuesday.
It's been a great experience so far for me. The Jenkins.io website for documentation has received already 10 or 15 independent contributors that have submitted pull requests to it. And the improvements are real. They're valuable. They matter. Most of them are quite simple. We like to keep good first issues really simple. And therefore, it's not a stretch for people to make a contribution to documentation as their first contribution.
You know, I want to go back to Jean-Marc and I went through this the other day, but I want to go through this real quick, if I can find it. There we go. There we go. So that's not where I wanted to go. You know where I wanted to go? I actually wanted to go to GitHub. I went to the wrong place. And Jenkins CI. There is a Hacktoberfest section here that has a link off to the FAQ, which then has even more information. So signing up, join the Gitter channel specifically for Jenkins CI. If you want to, that's not required, but it might help. And then you just start putting in pull request. But this is the part I wanted to get to. These are the issues or queries to the issues where you might want to figure out, okay, where can I help? This is that list.
Right. Well, and those lists are especially helpful because they will allow the person who wants to contribute to look at which things are of interest to them. There are enough issues in that list to say, hey, I'm interested in Git. No, I'm interested in GitHub. No, I'm interested in deployment techniques. I'm interested in any one of those areas. You're going to find an issue there that you can make a viable contribution to help with that issue. So choose something interesting to you.
Okay, and again, commits will be accepted through the end of October. And then once they go through and do the math, because what will happen is you'll get a GitHub app installed, or you'll be associated with a GitHub app. That way they can track you. You have to be tracked, right? I mean, come on. You're trying to add up commits, so you have to be able to track it in some way. And then once that's done, they validate it. If everything passes, then you either get a shirt or get a tree planted in your name. It's a win-win.
Right.
And I think that's it. So let's talk about what's going to be coming up. So next Tuesday, Jean-Marc and I will be back again, noon Eastern, 6 p.m. CET. And then we will be back in 4 weeks talking about another hopefully boring .3. But then we should also know which LTS new baseline is going to be happening.
Correct.
We can start thinking about, okay, what might I need to do over these next 4 weeks to get ready for that LTS.
Correct. And by then, with the new LTS baseline selected, we may even be able to show some of the upcoming capabilities that will be arriving in that next LTS because they'll have already been visible in weekly.
Okay. So I think that's it for today. Mark, do you have anything else?
Nothing else from me. Thanks, Darren.
Thanks, Mark. And to everybody else, if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and click on that button right below Mark and subscribe. That way you'll get notified anytime we have new content available and anytime we schedule these new live streams. So thanks again for joining us live today. If you're watching the replay, thanks so much for watching till the end. Have a great rest of your week.